Start. Okay. Good morning, everyone. This is Irina Kim. I'm the Program Support Assistant for the Orange County Inland Empire District Office. Welcome to our EIDL Reconsideration Q&A webinar. We have a special guest, Corey Williams. He is a Public Information Officer from the SBA Office of Disaster Assistance, and he will be answering all of your EIDL reconsideration concerns.
Irina, just FYI, I don't know if it's just me or not, but we lost your audio.
Oh, can you?
We can hear you now. We can hear you.
Yep. Before I hand over the mic to Corey, we just wanted to give you a quick tutorial on how to navigate Microsoft Teams for all of our attendees. So if you see in the upper right-hand corner of
Irina, we lost you again.
Okay.
Okay, I think we can hear you now.
Okay, I think there's a
Okay, let's do this since I think Irina's having a bit of audio difficulty. Let me do a mic check on Corey Williams. Corey, are you able to hear me?
Yes, can everybody hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Gloria, let's do one more check. Can you hear Corey?
Yes, Corey's
Okay.
heard fine.
Perfect.
Yes.
Irina, while you're squaring that away, I think we can jump right into the focus of today's call. For all of the folks that have been joining us on our daily SBA live Zoom calls, we've heard that there's been a lot of interest in obviously the EIDL program and the EIDL reconsideration process. And so we felt that it was important enough of a topic to ask Corey Williams, who is a public information officer from our Office of Disaster Assistance, to join us on this special webinar. So at this time, I'd like to turn it over to Corey, and I will let everyone know that the call is being recorded, so the Q&A and all that good stuff will be transcribed. So for folks that are either listening in on a phone or on a computer that doesn't have the full access to MS Teams, not to worry, we'll get as many questions answered as possible, and we'll get that out to you. So at this time, I'd like to turn it over to Corey.
Thank you so much, Chris. And, I really want to thank the Orange County SBA District Office for Orange County Inland Empire District Office, SBA District Office for hosting this EIDL reconsideration webinar. I've had a number of different businesses that have, really gotten a number of decline letters, unfortunately. And so this reconsideration webinar would be really good to go ahead and discuss some of those reasons for denial and ways that we can get that decision overturned. So we're going to go through a number of different things that you may have seen or issues you may have seen on your decline letter. And at the end of the presentation,
No volume, Chris.
Yeah, I'm not sure, Corey. Let me. There we go.
How about now?
Yeah,
Okay.
we can hear you now. Hey, real quick,
Okay.
let me. You know what? I'm sorry for folks that can hear this that are outside of SBA, but it's a housekeeping issue for any of the SBA team members on the line. Since you all are on as presenters, please do not make any changes to any of the settings or the options. Sign on, leave the computer alone. If you need to click the link as an attendee, go ahead and drop off as a presenter and do that, but do not touch any of the settings, please. Okay, Corey, go ahead, please.
Okay. Perfect. So the first first issue we're going to talk about is credit where the FICO is below the threshold, which also impacts the repayment ability. So our regulations allow the Office of Disaster Assistance to utilize credit as a basis to determine repayment ability. A minimum credit score threshold was established, and those individuals that fall below the threshold may be declined. Since we've already determined based on their credit score that there is no repayment ability, the only other means we have to address the request for reconsideration is to request the applicant provide us with a copy of the most recently filed federal tax return and a signed IRS form 4506T. So if you go to the irs.gov website, you can actually click on click on forms, or I think it's most downloaded forms, and the 4506T is one of the top or the most downloaded forms, and then you can get that actual form there. Now, also the processing loan officer must review the totality of the credit, not the credit score itself, to ascertain if the applicant has satisfactory credit and repayment ability will be based on the information contained in the tax returns, transcripts, in addition to any other documentation provided. So the simplified answer is that when you get a letter and it states the reconsideration, the SBA, we use the Experian credit report. So one of the first things that you want to do in regard to a credit decision, it states that you can contact Equifax, and that Equifax number is actually stated clearly on the letter, and get a copy of the credit report that SBA used to make the decision. Now, I've come across a number of different businesses who were very, very close to getting an approval. So one of the things by going through your credit report with a fine-tooth comb is look for a couple of things. If there are any issues that are showing, any of your creditors are showing maybe a late payment by a month, or if you have any small collections, and probably the most well-known small collections are like telephone companies, cable, cable bills, or anything like that. So the one thing that you have to keep in mind is that you want to give SBA significant information to overcome that decision. So if you go about the process of doing a written collection settlement, or if you actually get your actual account back up to current, that is significant information that can be used to overcome the decision. Now, simply stating that, because of Corona, we had to use the credit cards and we had to do this and we had to exhaust that, that may not be as accepted as opposed to just taking a look at your credit report, seeing if there's any small things that can be addressed first, and then maybe then being able to explain a little bit further some other circumstances that cause you to maybe use more credit, which could have dropped your score a little bit. But the most common thing that we do see is the fact that you want to just take a look at that credit report, and of course, if there's any little things, like I say, and the easiest things to overcome, small collections, or even showing a payment that was 1 month or 2 month late, that you get actually back to current, can increase your scores. So those are just some of the key things that can overcome that repayment threshold, or the credit history threshold. Okay, now the second issue is economic injury is not substantiated. So since we're unable to obtain a copy of the federal tax returns or transcripts for the COVID-19 declaration, our Office of Disaster Assistance had to change our normal process to determine economic injury. So for all COVID-19 declarations, the applicant is asked to self-certify the business's gross revenues and cost of goods sold, operating expenses for a nonprofit organization. This information for us in regard to COVID declarations is the sole basis for determining the economic loss. So for those individuals who were declined for no economic injury and request reconsideration, we will need to obtain a copy of their most recent federal tax return and also, again, their signed IRS Form 4506T to ascertain if the initial decision can be overturned. Now, another common error to this is that a lot of businesses have overstated their cost of goods sold, which puts them into negative ratios as far as their gross income being below their cost of goods sold. So one thing that, and again, with our partners at the Orange County Inland Empire SBA District Office, you know, being able to look at that breakdown will kind of help you see if there's any areas that, you know, that can be addressed that can overcome that decision. Sometimes it's just a simple error. We've had people who had their cost of goods sold, they accidentally put 50,000 when it should have been 5,000. So those are simple errors that can be completed. So in regard to that, the one thing that I would strongly recommend is just to look at your gross revenues, and remember your cost of goods sold. You want to make sure that it's not going to exceed your revenues. Otherwise, it may make it look like we're not able to allow you to take on the loan because that economic injury, again, is not substantiated. So that's one of the areas that, you know, that's, I guess, the second most common error that comes about. Now, the third area that we're going to discuss is not eligible due to character reasons. So the applicant should be provided what we call a SBA Form 912 to complete and return. Upon receipt of the completed 912 of the standard process outlined in our procedures will be followed. So what the Form 912 is, if let's say if you happen to check the box that you were convicted of a criminal offense, then what the Form 912 just allows us to do a simple background check, so which you can go to your local police station, and then also we would require getting fingerprints to make sure that, you know, just go ahead as a part of the background process to make sure that since the criminal offense was committed, that there haven't been any other issues criminal wise that may prohibit you from being eligible for the loan. I've seen a few different applications where the criminal offense was quite a while ago, and we were able to get that that reconsidered and actually get approved. So the one thing you want to do is show that, again, that there's been good character issues since that time. And, you know, a lot of times people have made mistakes in their life and they've turned their life around. So again, that Form 912 would address any kind of character reasons for denial. Also, the applicant requests a change in plans or fails to proceed. One of the things that we've come about is that the business, once they get their advance, they decide that they don't want to accept the loan. Again, keep in mind the advance is forgiven, so you're perfectly within your right to not accept the loan if you do not choose to proceed with the loan. Now, the one thing that under the loan authorization agreement, it states that we do encourage those that once they are in the portal, we do encourage them to sign their documents within 60 days of the loan authorization and agreement. So again, if you want to have someone review the documents with you, or if you may, one of the options that we've had too. So let's say we have an applicant that may have been approved for $100,000. Well, then keep in mind that once we get above that $25,000 threshold, it becomes a secured loan. So one of the things that a number of businesses may have looked at is, well, if I do the unsecured 25,000, now I don't have to pledge collateral. So you do have that option when you go into the portal if you're approved for 100,000. Now, keep in mind your paperwork will initially say 100,000, but once we get everything done, there will be an amended promissory note and an amended note that will be sent out that will state what the loan amount is. So again, if you only want to get that 25,000, the one thing I would encourage you to do is go ahead and sign the documents, request what amounts there, and then if you decide that 25,000 is enough to make you whole, then again we will send out an amended loan authorization agreement and an amended promissory note, and it will show that you're, since you didn't go above 25,000, the $100 that was filed for the collateral would not be taken out of the proceeds of the loan. Next category is not eligible because the applicant is not a small business. So the applicant must be provided with an SBA Form 355 application for small business size determination, and upon receipt of the completed form, we'll actually analyze that. So, our Orange County Inland Empire is very good at being able to determine the size limits for our small businesses. This hasn't come up very often in regard to being deemed a where business is too big for that. More or less that's come about with the PPP, with the loans being funded by banks. But I haven't come across I haven't come across a lot of cases where we've deemed it to not be a small business. The next category is not eligible due to delinquent child support payments. So in this regard, the applicant must supply documentation that your child support is not in arrears, or the individual must divest all direct and indirect interest in the business. So in that situation, the main thing is, if it's not that if you're currently under a child support agreement, you're still eligible for the SBA loan. And then if you have a situation where you've become delinquent and then you work out an agreement with the Attorney General's office, and then if you're still in compliance, you're still okay. It's just that if there's any kind of report that shows that there is any kind of delinquent child support, you want to make sure that you catch up that child support and get back onto the agreement. Then that way it'll be acknowledged from the Attorney General that the agreement that was required to cover the arrears is now in a current status. And again, that will overcome that decision. It's just a matter of making sure that you are in a current status with your child support agreement. The next one, which is the one that provides probably the most confusion whenever it's seen, is the business entity is not eligible. The economic injury disaster loans are available only to a small business engaged in an eligible business activity, and the business activity means the nature of the business conducted by the applicant. Applicant must provide a statement or documentation detailing the business activity, and this is where you'll see the line where it says unverifiable information. So a couple of cases that I wanted to kind of present to you where we've seen unverifiable information. I had a case this morning where it was a franchise it was a franchise that was a gym franchise that actually was declined for the loan, and because the franchise itself, it looked like a duplicate in the system in our portal. What happens is, the one thing that I told this particular business is to, one, get a copy of the franchise agreement, and two, get a copy of their articles of incorporation, because even though it is a franchise, Each of these individual franchises have their own individual tax ID, their own individual location. So it kind of overcomes our rapid portal system because our system is, processing so many applications. So if we see the same gym 20 times, it brings up that question. It looks like it's a duplicate, so it makes it to where it looks like it's unverifiable. So again, simple things that you can do. You can get a copy of your franchise agreement. You can also get a copy of your articles of incorporation, and then also any kind of federal tax information. That will be your federal tax returns or your 4506T, which you hear quite often, that allows SBA to pull your tax transcript and verify the taxes being paid for this particular business. Another common issue that I had in regard to unverifiable information is some citizenship issues. So the one thing with citizenship issues, whether it's a green card or E2 visa or whatever may be the case, if that is a reason for your decline, you want to make sure you're showing whatever information that shows that can correct any kind of citizenship issues that may come about. So if there's any kind of maybe your green card may have lapsed or whatever may be the situation in that regard, again, any kind of verification showing that can overcome that decision. But the main thing is anytime, again, and these are a couple of issues that have come about too. The owner information failed validation. Information does not go together. Person's listed as deceased. Bank account routing number is incorrect. Bank account ownership is not matching the business. Again, these are simple fixes because not only will this hold up your EIDL loan advance, this will also potentially hold up the processing of your loan. So another thing that I've been able to do is encourage the actual business to get a copy from their bank of a letter verifying that they are the owner of the account and that, they are verifying that this person verifies the account number, the routing number. So these are simple things that, again, can hold up not only your EIDL loan advance, but also hold up your loan. So if that error comes, the easiest way to get that fixed is to go and get a copy of a bank letter that verifies that you are indeed the owner of the account and that it verifies that you have your signatory for that account. Also, any kind of digital identity fraud suspicion or suspicious online behavior, the data has altogether has been fraudulently online. So again, due to a number of, to the way the system was, we did have a number of duplicate applications. In fact, I had one business that had actually 100 other businesses that were under separate tax ID numbers, but it showed up as the same name because the same owner actually owned a number of these different hotels. So in that same regard, having the articles of incorporation, having any kind of tax returns, again, that can show that that is a completely separate business or a completely separate entity, whether it's an LLC, S Corp, C Corp, or whatever entity that it comes under. So the one thing that you want to do is just show any kind of information that can overcome that decision. Most of the time, the articles of incorporation or the tax transcript for each of those individual businesses will be able to delineate those entities as far as showing them as separate entities, which would then in turn make them eligible for the EIDL loan and the EIDL loan advance. So those are the high points of that I've seen in regard to reconsideration. So I'm going to open it up for any questions and answers, and that way we can have even more dialogue.
Corey, thank you very much for that overview, and thank you for leaving ample time for Q&A. So SBA folks, let's just handle it the way we handle the Zoom calls. And Corey, I guess in the interest of being able to get through as many questions, if there are answers that you can provide that are just short and sweet, then the more the merrier of those types, just to get through as many questions as possible.
Awesome.
Okay, if we're ready for questions. Corey, we received this question quite a bit. I will read this specific one. I received on notice on May 2nd that my EIDL application had been received and was being processed. I have not heard anything since then. What can I expect to happen next? How and where can I check the status of the application if I applied online?
Outstanding question. So the one thing is, until you actually get the EIDL portal invite, there's no way to actually check the status online. So the only way that you can actually I don't know if the Orange County SBA District Office has a direct inbox that they can send, that they receive application. The best thing to do is to have the application number, and then we have a special team that handles our inquiries from the district office. So Chris, do you all have a special inbox? I know Fresno had an inbox that would forward information over to our Office of Disaster Assistance. Is there inbox through Orange County at all?
Yes, team, our district office, our mainline email would be OCIEDO DSUP, so DSUP at SBA.gov. And Gloria, that's the correct email, correct?
That is correct.
OCIEDO DSUP at SBA.gov. That'll go to our main inbox, and we can help with the status checks.
Yes, and then we that'll be forwarded over. We have what we call our COVID email inbox, which handles our direct inquiries. So as far as status updates, and Chris has, has been, and the staff has been awesome as far as sending information my way if there's any trouble cases as well. So, and I'll be more than happy to look into those trouble cases if there is more research needed.
Okay, our next question. I submitted a file for reconsideration over 2 weeks ago. I called today, they don't have it in their system yet. Mostly verification issues, and I have a lot of frustrated clients. Any way of expediting this, or will it get any better in the future?
Well, keep in mind that we do have a number of people that have applied for the loan and that are also applying for reconsideration. So whenever you email the PDC recons at SBA.gov, again, that's PDC, which stands for Processing and Disbursement Center, recons, RECONS at SBA.gov, you'll get an auto-generated email that states that it's been received, but as far as any kind of time frame exact, I wish I could give you a time frame. But the one thing that, again, if you want to, if there's any major issues that you feel, once you send the email to the Orange County, Chris and his team and Alberto and Chris and Alberto and great staff at Orange County Inland Empire will flag any kind of major cases, and I can possibly do some extra follow-up. I just don't, I have other functions throughout the day as far as with my job as a public information officer, and sometimes it gets confusing whenever, because businesses kind of think that I'm a loan officer, and my support function is not that. I only can do so much. But Chris and and Alberto and the great staff at Orange County know that if there's any trouble issues, I can definitely look into them further.
Thank you, Corey. The next question is, if I've been approved for EIDL, can I be reconsidered for more than the approved amount? And if so, can this be done before you take the funds or after?
Great question. So my recommendation is to go ahead and accept the funds as is. Now, again, there has, even though we haven't received any direction from our headquarters in regard to a limit, there is what we've seen as a number that's kind of been a top threshold or top end threshold. Now we are working on making sure that we're able to fund all the businesses, because keep in mind, this is the first time in our nation's history that we've had a disaster in all 50 states and all of our U.S. territories, including Puerto Rico, Guam, American Samoa, and the like. So this is a very extraordinary disaster. So the one thing we want to be able to do is make sure that we're getting funds to all the businesses. And I think even as of Monday, I think we've approved over $75 billion in loans to the businesses across the country, including all U.S. territories. So, the one thing I will tell you to do is that, stay alert. And if there are any options, I definitely will keep Alberto and Chris updated if there may be an opportunity to potentially increase the loan amount. But the one thing I would do, I wouldn't hold up your loan trying to get an increase, because that modification can only probably delay you even further. So go ahead and accept it as is. And then if it looks like there may be some increases, I will definitely let Alberto and Chris know so they can let you all know as well.
Great. Next question. For EIDL, we received the link to open the account. We opened the link and we answered the questions, but the system had a problem verifying our identity. We have been denied. How do we get another chance at these questions?
Great question. So that probably came in as unverifiable information. So if you want to send an email over to the Orange County box, maybe flag it and put in unverifiable information. I'm sure Chris and Alberto can forward it over to me, and then I'll see if I can look a little bit further into that particular situation, because that's more of a case-by-case basis. But again, we don't want to, the one thing is to make sure we're not just inundating their box. If there's any reason, that's why I try to make sure to cover through a lot of issues, whether it's a franchise, where, if you have a franchise business, easy ways to overcome that decision is to get articles of incorporation, to show any kind of franchise agreement, anything in writing that shows the purpose of your business that may say, and then we've also come across prohibited idle business activity. And then if you show the tax returns, you show the purpose or the articles of incorporation, again, those are things that can overcome the decision. So I don't want to inundate the box when maybe there are some quick fixes that can be addressed. But if there are any trouble issues, Chris and Alberto, I'm sure they'll flag them to me, and I'll see if I can get any further intel.
Corey, can you give more insight to this question? It's similar to the previous one, but our company is owned by 2 S Corps and our EIDL loan was denied as there was no individual to check the credit for loan approval. How can we supply an individual for reconsideration?
So in that situation, most likely the owners of, even though it's corporate owned by 2 S Corps, that the S Corp itself, or the owner of the S Corp, that has to be some person that would be involved. But again, that's one of those case by case basis. I would probably, have Alberto and Chris kind of flag, but it seems like the easiest fix would be that the person or the owner of that S Corp that owns the business, they would probably be the ones that would have their credit pulled to do that. But like I said, that may be one we may have to flag, and I can try to do a little more work on that one.
Okay. I was not able to apply for EIDL because my net for 2019 was negative. How can I apply for EIDL with a loss for 2019, if possible?
Okay, great question. So right now, the portal is currently closed. It's only open to agricultural businesses and those applicants who applied prior to March 29th and received an application number starting with a 2. So the one thing that, and I think is really great that Alberto and Chris and the Orange County Inland Empire District Office is having these daily webinars. As more updates become available, I definitely will keep the office informed. But right now, the portal is only open to agricultural businesses and those applicants who applied prior to our streamlined portal, which it launched on March 29th. So at this time, if it doesn't fall within any of those two categories, then you will have to wait, unfortunately.
So Corey, just to be clear, for this specific question, would they have to reapply? That's not considered a reconsideration?
If they, so yours sound like from the
For the
question,
net
they
loss.
haven't, did they apply at all, or it sounded like they didn't apply?
Right, I'm just asking if somebody did with a net loss, is that a reason to be declined? Is that a reconsideration?
Yes. If they end up showing a net loss, then most likely that would have generated a decline. So in that case, they did apply. So then, yes, they would have they would be eligible to apply for reconsideration within 6 months.
Great, thank you. So on the subject of the agricultural business, are you able to speak to this question? Our company is a hemp grower / CBD producer. We applied under agriculture and got an approval. Then they denied it after underwriting review, and the denial letter stated business activity is not eligible. According to everything I have read, hemp farming is eligible. Anything you can provide on that?
Great question. So at this time, any hemp farming has been deemed to be a prohibited business or idle activity for the purposes of the economic injury disaster loan, and I believe it's also prohibited through the PPP as well. We are making a number of ever-changing things or updates to both programs. In fact, there were new PPP updates that were installed last week. There is a possibility that there may be new updates to those in the hemp industry where they'll be considered as an agricultural business and be able to be approved. But at this time, they currently aren't eligible for the economic injury disaster loan.
Okay, thank you for that. If I applied on March 30th, but did not check the box for the advance, I was told to reapply and did on 4/3. Later, I was told it was considered a duplicate and was not eligible for the advance. Is that correct, or how can I correct that?
Great question. In fact, we actually started an initiative last Thursday that's going to allow those businesses that one may have accidentally checked, didn't check the box to receive the idle advance or made errors in their processing where the duplicate app, really the original app was needed to be corrected, and the second app calls a duplicate. So we've been told that process, you may start to receive emails within the next week or two, and then you will be able to go back into the portal and make those updates. But again, right now, they're in the process of kind of launching that. So again, there is a way that we are trying to address those idle advances in that situation. So just be on the lookout for any emails and make sure that the email that we're going to send to is the one that you used at the time that you applied through the Streamline portal, because we've seen a number of email addresses that have been changed or deactivated. So please make sure that if there's any kind of change in your email, you can kind of send those notes, and then I will, our ComCOVID or myself will be able to update those those updates into the portal if it is an email update or anything like that.
Okay, great. Is it true we can send a reconsideration with a co-borrower? How likely is approval with this option if the denial was for credit?
So in regard to credit, having a co-signer, of course, one thing too, we also have to be able to determine the credit history and repayment ability of the co-signer as well. So just having a second person, if they're not credit worthy or don't have the ability to repay the loan, doesn't so much guarantee an approval. But if there is another person that has the credit history and repayment ability, yes, that can play a factor in being able to get approved for the loan. And then also keep in mind that co-signer is going to have to execute all the documents with the borrower, and that way they'll also be on the loan as well. So yes, it is possible to add a co-signer, and that can be if they do have the repayment ability and credit history to be able to be looked at as a suitable candidate. Yes, that can help in the decision.
And Corey, to kind of tag on to that, would you say that the process for that is just to simply respond to that email address with that co-borrower's information?
Yes, that would probably be the simplest way, is to go to the PDC Recons, that PDCRECONS at SBA.gov. Always, and I see this very common. I think a lot of businesses don't realize the number of applications that we're processing on a daily basis. So a couple of different things that you want to do. Always make sure to put your application number in the subject line of your emails. One, it saves a lot of time for those that are looking into your file, and keep in mind that we have a significant number of applications that says this again is the first time in our nation's history that we've had a declaration in all 50 U.S. states and all U.S. territories. And then in addition to putting your application number for the request reconsideration, put in a little subject line, just something that helps them see what's going on. So you can put subject line, looking to add co-borrower or co-signer on application, or you may have articles of incorporation. So every time that I've updated information in the system, I always put the application number, and then I'll always put in bank statement. I'll always put in articles of incorporation. I'll put in 4506T. So it just makes it easier, because keep in mind you are in queue. So the one thing you want to do is just make it much easier for those when you do get in the queue, they're not having to look for your account number and everything. So please, if there's anything when you're doing your reconsideration, always put your application number and what document you're trying to add or what things you're trying to do, so it makes it easier for the loan officer to see.
Great. You mentioned Experian and Equifax credit reports. Of the two, which one should we analyze when trying to repair credit?
Great question. So on most of the letters, in fact, I believe 99% of our letters, it's Experian that we are using, and it states on there that you can call Experian and get a copy of the credit report that was used to analyze your particular case. So the one thing is, in any kind of credit situation, the first thing you want to do is get a copy of that credit report, because those are some of the simplest things to overcome. One, it could show a payment that's a month late. Well, that's dinged your score maybe 5-10 points. Or you may have a collection from a cable company or a phone company that's $200 that they might be willing to settle for 75 or 80, almost pennies on the dollar. So again, whenever you're doing written settlement negotiations, please make sure you get something in writing that states if they are willing to accept a lesser amount as a settlement, to get a copy of that, and then also show a copy of your payment. And then whenever you scan and email that over, make sure you include all that documentation, because again, that's substantive information that can overcome the decision. Or if you get a any kind of account that's current. A lot of the car companies, mortgage companies have also agreed to do 3-month deferment. So, if you got behind, maybe call your mortgage company, call the bank where your loan for your car is at, and see if they are willing to, do a 3-month deferment. And then and a lot of times they'll put that in writing. So again, that shows significant information, and especially if you had a late payment and they're willing to correct, go ahead and update that in the system. That can be substantive information that can overcome that decision. So just little things like that can help in the processing.
Great insight. The next question is related. What is the credit score SBA is looking for? Is there a FICO threshold?
Well, great question. There is a set score. We're not authorized to disclose that score. But yes, there is a minimum score that is that SBA is using, and unfortunately, I can't disclose that particular score.
Sure. Okay, my denial letter simply says unverifiable information, yet doesn't detail what information they weren't able to verify. You mentioned a few reasons that could fall under that, but how do I get specific details on my application and the reason for unverifiable information? Great
question. So one of the things, again, using the Orange County Inland Empire box, if it's something that I think that is a troublesome case, Chris and Alberto will definitely flag it to me, and I'll do everything I can to go in and look and see what notes are in the portal and get that over to Chris or Alberto or the great staff at Orange County Inland Empire, who want me to look into the case further. But again, keep in mind, a lot of times, if you know that maybe ask yourself, do I have a franchise? So if I have a franchise, most likely I need to get a copy of the franchise agreement, and also I probably need to get a copy of the articles of incorporation. If I have citizenship issues, and look at the simple things, are there issues that did my green card expire? Do I have an E2 visa, or what's that citizenship status? Bank account. If you've had issues with a bank account before, go get a letter from the bank stating that you're the owner of the account number is correct, the routing number is correct. Again, there's easy fixes before we, so much inundate the email inbox, because that's, if you think about some things that can be practically done. And again, one of the easiest fixes is to get a copy of your tax return showing that you're operating as a business, paying taxes, and everything is, and then also your IRS form 4506T. So those are just a couple of easy things that can be that you can get, and again, that can go in and help towards overcoming that decision.
Great. Is there a separate phone number to call for a reconsideration status versus a regular application status?
Great question. Unfortunately, there's not. So one of the things that with the reconsideration team, it's at our processing center in Fort Worth, Texas. In order to be able to address all the reconsideration requests, you can imagine if they start getting phone calls in addition to trying to process these requests, it's only going to slow down the process even more. So my recommendation, again, call the customer service center number at 1-800-6 659-2955. They're open every day of the week from 5 a.m. to 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. So again, 1-800-659-2955. But the one thing I do want to encourage you, I know everybody wants to get the funding and they want their reconsideration request approved within 2 days after they do it. You know, I know it's tough, but the one thing I will tell you, please be patient. Just in seeing the number of emails that I received, just to kind of help review different reconsideration requests, I can imagine the number of reconsideration requests that they're receiving. So trust that you are in queue. As long as you get that automated email, know that you are in the queue to be reviewed. So I can't promise it's going to be 1 day or 2 days or 2 weeks, but the fact that you got that automated email, and one common thing that people have been sending is they accidentally send it to PDC Recon, not PDC Recons. So it's PDC RECONS at SBA.gov.
Thank you, Corey. And I'm adding that so that everybody can see the email spelled out. Okay, sorry about that. Okay, we were declined by EIDL because business activity is not eligible. That's very broad and doesn't explain. Can you clarify which business activity is not eligible?
Great question. So most likely, I've seen that as probably the second or third most common reason for getting a loan denied. So, and sometimes it's a common situation. I apologize. I am teleworking, so my dog is barking a little bit. So, but one of the things, again, that is common to overcome that decision is to get a copy of the Articles of Incorporation and also a copy of the 4506T or any tax returns. That shows that the business is operating legally in the U.S. and it's registered in the state of California. So there shouldn't be any issues in regard to showing that it's not an actual eligible business activity. But there is a list of certain businesses. Again, the tough part with agriculture businesses with hemp and different things, casino operations, for the most part, are some smaller casinos may be eligible, but there are definitely a lot of there are definitely some ineligible entities. But as the legislation has been expanding, it's actually been adding and encompassing a number of businesses. So it may not be eligible immediately now, but you never know. It may change at a later point.
Great. Do you need the tax return for both the business and the owner's personal return if the company is an S Corp and a service-based business?
I would recommend yes. Mainly you want the S Corp, but it doesn't hurt to have the personal taxes, because I know with a number of LLCs and sometimes the S Corps, it may actually show it through their personal income tax, especially more common with the LLCs. So it doesn't hurt if there are, if you do have the S Corp taxes and the personal income taxes, to have both. Again, I always say it's always best to give more information than less information.
Great. When I applied, I put the COGS incorrectly. I included all expenses, so it was higher than it should be. I heard about that issue here, but not what to do to correct it. What do you advise?
Great question. So all they would do is write a simple letter, and again, that the things that would most commonly overcome that decision is the profit and loss statement, which would come from the federal tax return, showing their gross revenues minus their expenses, and that would probably show then if it's that it's actually has a net profit. So then it would put them in a position where they can take on the loan. So the tax returns in that situation or the IRS form 4506T would be a great resource because the 4506T allows us to get the tax transcript not only for the individual, but also for the business to make sure everything is in compliance.
Great. Now this next one, we've received this quite a few times. The EIDL loan advance was meant not to have to be repaid. Does it turn into a loan if I get a PPP? Is there anything you can add to that?
Great question. So, you know, what we've noticed, and again, keep in mind with the EIDL program, it's funded by the U.S. Treasury. PPP loans are funded by banks, so that's the big difference. What we have seen, the EIDL advance does not become a loan, but what we have seen is that a number of PPP lenders, once they find out the amount of the advance, they may offset the amount of your PPP loan based on the amount that you receive for an advance. So it doesn't so much make it they have to be repaid from the for the EIDL perspective, but it can potentially reduce some of your eligibility from your PPP. Chris or Alberto, I don't know if you want to add anything on in regard to that, but that's kind of what I've seen. Have you all seen anything different?
Yeah, so this is something that has come up numerous times on our 2 p.m. calls, and I believe that we're still waiting on final guidance from SBA and Treasury on how the two programs interact.
Perfect. Yeah. So, and then we don't have it. You know, that's about as much as I've seen. But yeah, any advance funds for the EIDL, they do not have to be repaid back unless, you know, like I say, I mean, even if you don't take the loan, there's no requirement for the repayment of any EIDL advance, even if you don't take the SBA loan.
Right, thank you. If a business receives an EIDL loan and then sells the business, does the seller of the business have to pay off the EIDL loan prior to the change of ownership to the new business owner? Is there any insight you can share?
Great question. That's come about a number of times, and that's actually a servicing issue question. Once the main thing right now of what we're trying to do for all of our businesses impacted by COVID is to get funds to them so they can keep their business operational. But once the loans actually become what we call fully dispersed, they will be transferred to our servicing center in El Paso or Birmingham, most likely El Paso. And servicing issues in regard to that, that will be more of their purview in regard to answering that question. The main thing for us, again, at this time is to get the actual funds to the businesses and keep the business operational so we can prevent it from having to be sold or anything like that. So so more or less whenever, and keep in mind that there is that 1-year deferment still that's in place. So you're not having to make that first payment till most likely June or July of 2021 with the deferment. So but yes, there, you know, that would be a servicing question, and my recommendation, if that comes about, to contact the servicing center as soon as possible if you think that situation may come about.
Okay, great. Is a misdemeanor offense / DUI denial of EIDL able to be reconsidered? It happened more than a year ago. I've sent a package to Reconsider Center and received back an email that requested Form 912 as well as a voided check.
So again, as a public information officer and any of us, we can't make any eligibility determinations in the field. My recommendation is you did everything right. You did the Form 912 and we did the background check. You know, our processing center will make that determination. So it's, you know, so as long as you follow the steps, then our processing center will review that reconsideration request. Okay,
great. I have been tagged for duplicate application. I have sent email explaining the reason, but still hasn't changed. What do you recommend?
Well, in that situation, now, the one thing we got to find out is, are the businesses using separate tax IDs? So one common issue that I did have, and I wanted to try to, I think we're kind of getting close to the end, but one thing, I had one business that had 5 different locations, but they all use the same tax ID number. Because of that, even though they have 5 different locations, they're still only eligible for one loan, because we only can do a loan for the tax ID number. But let's say we have a same situation where they have 5 different businesses, 5 different tax IDs. In that situation, yes, they should not have duplicate applications, but you want to make sure that you are, that you're using separate tax IDs, because if you have a situation where you're using the same tax ID and you can have 10 locations, you're still only eligible for one loan. But if you have 10 locations and you have 10 different tax IDs, yes, we do need to get that duplicate status fixed. So please review your articles of incorporation and your tax paperwork to make sure that you actually have, is it separated as one tax ID, or are each of the businesses, whether LLC, C Corps, or whatever, if they all have individual tax ID numbers, then yes, we can work on clearing that status.
Great, Corey, and I know we're up at time. I just have one last question that needs clarification. I've heard several times that a borrower has 60 days to sign the EIDL loan, but in other places I've heard 30 days. Can you please confirm, do I have 30 days or 60 days to sign?
I believe on the loan authorization agreement, which is where to say that, I want to say it states that they have 60 days. That's actually going to be on page 2 of the loan authorization agreement, I believe. And Chris and I actually did a virtual closing with an applicant. I believe it was not this past Friday, but the Friday beforehand. And I'm not totally sure. I'd have to look at the paperwork before, but I believe it states 60 days. I don't believe that language has changed. I think it is 60 days from the date of the loan authorization agreement to sign the documents.
Okay, thank you, Corey.
Thank you, Gloria. And again, special thank you to Corey Williams with our SBA Office of Disaster Assistance for joining us today. Obviously, with the amount of questions that are in the box, we are not able to get to every question. But Irina, I'd like to share my screen just so everyone can see our email address. Let's see here. Make sure I'm going to the right spot. Okay. Hopefully everyone sees. Gloria, let me know if you see like our district directory.
Yes, it's up. Okay,
I just wanted everyone to see. I had to make a correction on the email address for our office. It's ociedo-dsup@sba.gov. That'll go to our main inbox. So for folks that have some of these cases that they are really in need of a status check, you can email there, and then we will try our best to get that to ODA for clarification and for update. Again, Corey's primary role is as a public information officer, and so he has a number of other duties as we all do at SBA, but so we want to kind of save his inbox. There below on the right, you can see the email addresses for the SBA district office staff in case you need to reach out to us. And just a quick reminder that at 2 o'clock, we will have our daily SBA Live Zoom call. Again, at 2 o'clock, we have that daily where we'll go over the EIDL program, the PPP, touch on the forgiveness, touch on the Flexibility Act, and answer more questions. And so many of you have joined us, I know, but again, we wanted to have this call today just on reconsideration. If you have any other questions, please feel free to reach out to us via email or phone, and we'll try to get that answered for you. Corey, any last closing words or anything on your end?
Well, you know, I really thank the Orange County Inland Empire District Office for having this webinar. You know, it's so important, especially now businesses are wanting to get this reconsideration information. And, you know, we love to work with our district office. So if you want me back on any other point, then, you know, I'd be more than happy to assist at a later webinar.
No, sounds good, Corey. We appreciate that. I think the last thing that I would say is from, you know, I think the whole team here, the SBA team, learned a lot from what you had to share. And what I was gathering was, regardless of the reason, unfortunately, if somebody was declined at this initial sort of review, regardless of the reason, it seems like everybody is absolutely eligible to at least apply for reconsideration. Correct. And some of these things are, you know, unverifiable or just easy fixes. So don't be disheartened. Look to us for more insight, and then we'll help shepherd you through the ODA process, and hopefully on the back end, you'll end up with the assistance that you need. I mean, is that fair to say, Corey?
Yeah, that's very fair to say. Everybody has a right to do a reconsideration within 6 months. And a lot of times, the one thing that I always encourage you to do is that, you know, simple fixes to make sure that you can get the, you know, your reconsideration successful. You know, I know there's always exigent circumstances that come about. You know, we just had to use the credit cards. We had, you know, do the practical things. If it's a credit report, look at the credit report, get a copy of it, review it. Don't just say, oh, well, this is why I had to do it, and not actually do the steps that's detailed on the letter.
Great. Thank you very much, Corey. Real quick, the PDC recons, someone saying that it came back undeliverable. It's PDC recons, RECONS at SBA.gov, PDC recons at SBA.gov. That's your first step toward requesting reconsideration. Okay, thank you very much. Irina, I think you can close us out. And folks, we'll see you on the 2 o'clock call. Take care, everyone.